For those who are unfamiliar with the Riveter, we are a modern union for working women. We provide co-working spaces, we have content and resources, and by the very nature of y'all being here today, connecting with each other, we provide community. And what is so special about tonight is, I don't know what it's like in LA, because I'm here in Seattle, but we don't get to see a lot of rooms that look like this, right? And to be able to be here together with you all in this space, for the conversations that we're going to have today, I am so ecstatic, I'm so thrilled, and I'm so ready and open to really connect with each one of you here today, to learn about what brought you here, you know, what's important to you and how we can support each other as a community. And so I'm super pumped about that. And so what's great, y'all are here today, but we have 2 locations in Los Angeles, right? We also have 3 locations in Seattle, and you're part of this broader network, not just LA and Seattle, which are our OG locations, but we're also in Austin, Dallas, Denver, Minneapolis, and Portland. Yes. Woo, yes, let's clap it up for growth. And so, again, you have the community that's here, and you have this larger network of folks, women and allies who are dedicated to see equity of opportunity for women in our lifetimes. We're not waiting 100, 200 years to get what we're worth. We're getting that now, and how we're gonna get there is events like this and really connecting with each other to get these cheat codes to stomp out the patriarchy, right? Yes, exactly. So, I have been working with Sage and Aparna, who are the founders of Future for Us, and we'll introduce them in a bit, for several months now, planning on how we can really work together with the Riveter and Future for Us, how we can bring really important content and create new communities in our locations. And so tonight is the launch of the State of Women of Color Roadshow. This is the very first event, and we'll be traveling to all the 6 other cities in the next 7 weeks. They'll be doing all of the traveling. I'll just go to the cool ones, like tonight. They're all cool. But this is in the same time zone, so it's great.
You're not in Minneapolis.
And so what's really important, right before I came up on stage, I Googled just woman to see the images that come up. And the images that come up just for the word woman, they're not the faces that we see here today. Not us, okay? Not women of color. And that's what makes the Save the Women of Color Roadshow so important. That's what makes the work that Future for Us so important, because we want to see women of color at the center when we're talking about women. Yes. Clap it up. And so who here is familiar with the Equal Pay Days? There's a big activation in April. April 2nd is the Equal Pay Day for the average wages. That's the symbolic day that women on average would have to work to what a white, non-Hispanic man made for all of 2018. So while everyone was like, Equal Pay Day, April 2nd, it wasn't until August 22nd where we had Black Women's Equal Pay Day. It's not until Monday, September 23rd, where we have Native Women's Equal Pay Day. And it won't be until November 20th when we get Latinx Women's Equal Pay Day. And so this 80 cents, this Equal Pay Day in April, masks what's really happening with women of color. And so if we don't talk about that, if we don't focus specifically on women of color, specifically on Latinx women when we're talking about equal pay, nobody gets equal pay. And so it's so critical that we absolutely center women of color when we're talking about creating innovations for what the future of work is going to look like, because it's us. And so I'm so excited that we get to create these spaces at the Riveter to center women of color, not just for events like these, but really think about intersectionality in a real way, which is not easy work in everything that we're doing, and that's the work that I'm committing to in my role at the Riveter. Our motto on every single one of our locations, we say, built by women for everyone. And my job and what we're all doing here today is making that for everyone part mean something. That everyone can come into our spaces, that everyone can really thrive and work in life. And it's communities like this, it's spaces like this, is gonna make that a reality. And so I am so thrilled, super, super excited. Thank you everyone who came out to spend time with us today. And I would love to introduce Sage and Aparna, who are the founders of Future for Us.
Hello, LA. go! Man, this is a phenomenal and can I say gorgeous group of women of color and allies. Holy crap, like you guys showed up and your full selves. You know, Parna and I have been working on this for a while, and Jody Ann, like, give her a round of applause, everybody. Like, doing this work is phenomenal. And, you know, before we start, I want everybody to take a deep breath. Just take a pause and look around the room. Like, seriously, look around the room. I think as women of color and as women, we are busy being excellent at every damn thing. And we forget to pause and live in the present. And this curated and intentional space is what Future for Us is all about, community. Because without community, there's no liberation. Rest in love, Audre Lorde. And this is why we created Future for Us. And here we can get the little clicker here. I forgot this part. Awesome. And I'm Sage.
And I'm Aparna.
And we're the co-founders of Future for Us. Future for Us is a platform dedicated to advancing women of color at work through community, culture, and career development. Since launching January of this year, we've hosted over a dozen events. We've grown a community of 5,000 women of color professionals, and we've done incredible things. We've been featured in Forbes, GeekWire, and other news outlets. We work with over 24 companies. And we're here today. We are located mostly in the greater Seattle area. And what we've been focused on today is like, how do we center the future of work around women of color? And what we're doing is we're taking this show to a national level. But before we start, we want to thank our national partner, the Riveter, and their amazing team of ladies. Where are you guys right now? Everybody raise your hands up. Awesome. Without them, we would not be here today. This partnership is a shining example of what allyship looks like when it's implemented for impact and change. If you guys are curious about space and membership, please wrangle one of these women and come and check it out. Like, this is what it's all about. So thank you so much. Also, our national sponsors, Bumble Biz, who are doing the free headshots in the back. So please, at 8 o'clock when we round up, get your headshots. And Hired. If you guys are looking for opportunities, please check out these two companies. And last but not least, our sponsored host for tonight is #WeAllGrown Latina Network. Where's Anna? She's in here. There you go. Thank you so much. Tala and Laundry and Gifts. Are you guys here? Tala and Laundry and Gifts. Thank you so much. Can we get a round of applause for them? LA-based company supporting this event is really huge for us. So thank you so much for being a part of it. And this is why we're coming back to this conversation of community. According to all reports and also media coverage, women of color are the largest growing segment of degree holders and also new hires. So we are the most talented, ambitious group out there. Can I get a hell yeah? Hell yeah! And now I'm gonna give the mic to Aparna. Well, she has her mic. I'm gonna give the mic to Aparna. She's gonna kick off our State of Women of Color presentation. So thank you so much, guys.
I'll actually let you look at this picture of our community from Seattle. I don't know how many people are from California and from this region in the room. How many people are native Los Angelites? Sorry, immigrant. I plead non-American. Yeah, this is our community in Seattle, and so I'm not from Seattle. My name is Aparna. I grew up in India and the Middle East and Nepal, and then moved here when I was a teenager. Really exciting to move to America when you're 15 with a really thick Indian accent, and spent my 20s living stateside. And the whole time I lived in Seattle, I was like, where are the brown people at? And so every time we bring community together, like the thing that makes me feel really excited is that I am getting to meet phenomenal women. And what I'm also noticing is that like y'all are also really well dressed. Like, which, if any of you have ever been to Seattle, like we are not famous for our fashion. Nobody said, like, I love shopping in Seattle because people there, they just know all their grays. So, it's great to be here in LA. I am loving the sunshine. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to fly down here, in part just for the vitamin D. It's free if it's just here. And I don't have to like go and get some and eat it. But also because we get really, really excited about these conversations. And I'm gonna confess right now that I'm definitely like the nerdy, introverted half of this duo, so bear with me. I'm really hoping to kick us off with some data, some things that we're learning as we've been growing our Future for Us community for the last 8 months. And I'm going to start with 2 things. So the first one, for the people that are like way far in the back, it says that women of color are driven and they're more likely to want to advance than their white peers, including white men. And this is from the McKinsey & Company's Lean and Report. It comes out every year. It's called Women in the Workplace. And when I was flipping through the report, it really struck me that like women of color are way more ambitious, and in particular, like Asian women, Latinas, and Black women are far more ambitious and wanting to excel in their careers than white men. Can you imagine that? You're like, yes, I know. You're like me. You're like, yes, that would be me. And the other thing, which this is just from last week, this is an article that came out in the Washington Post, and it says, for the first time, most new working age hires in the US are people of color. And if you actually read the article, it'll tell you that like most of the people are women of color. And I was like, holy shit, like our time is here. Like this is happening. So here's what we think. We think that women of color are the future of work in America. We are growing fastest in the workforce, but also like the largest number of degree holders. You hear a lot of rhetoric in media about people of color and who is educated and who isn't educated. And I'm sure if you typed in like educated or college woman, you'd probably see a lot of white women. But the truth is that like we're out there not only hustling, not only working hard, but also like getting damn degrees. Right? You're like, let me show you my 5 diplomas. And I feel like we live at a time where we're lucky enough where research is pointing in those directions as well. Research is showing that women of color want all of the things that anybody else wants. We want the ability to flourish and excel. We want to be challenged. We want to be recognized. We want to have the autonomy to have a really incredible quality of life. We want to have a chance to do meaningful work that makes a difference. Like, how many women in here are in a line of work that's like changing the world? Many of you, and the rest of you are joining us after this conversation. We also want to be able to earn well. Thank you, Beyonce. The Homecoming soundtrack is the only one that I've listened to all year. I think my partner is gonna break up with me. Because I think he's tired of listening to it. Especially like, I'm like, who will buy it for themselves? And he's like, I just bought groceries. So when we started Future for Us, we said, hey, like the trends are pointing in the right direction, but why is it that women of color are not showing up in leadership roles? Like, why are we not showing up in the boardrooms? Why are we not showing up in the C-suite? And across all sectors, what we're noticing, and this isn't just tech or publicly traded big companies, this is also nonprofits, also government, we're seeing that women of color represent about 3 to 4% of the C-suite and the boardrooms. And this really is at the heart of why we started Future for Us, because we believe that women of color deserve to lead at the highest levels. And I refuse to believe the rhetoric that we only should be leading big companies. I think we should be leading nonprofits. I think we should be leading in local governments. How many people in this room want to run for office one day? Just look, there are 2 of them. So let's memorize their names and faces. How many people in this room want to run their own company? Okay, we have some like CEO potential in this room. How many people already run their own companies? Amazing, I love it. So Sage and I, we met a year and a half ago. We were both working at women's organizations. I was working in philanthropy. Sage was working to help launch Ladies Get Paid in Seattle, and she did a phenomenal job. And you know, our relationship started off honestly in trying to organically build community with women of color in Seattle, and we grew to, you know, like doing events and speaking things. And by the end of the year, we found this McKinsey-Lena report, and you're going to hear us talk about it all the time until like you probably download it yourself and read it. And it was the report that gave us not only the data, but like just the courage to create change, because it put facts with our experience. And one of the things that we realized is that like just because a city is progressive doesn't mean it's easy for people of color to thrive there. Earlier today when we were setting up and getting ready with Jody Ann, she said, you know, are you going to tell any personal stories? And so there's one that I'll share, and I think that, you know, for me, it's like one of those reminders of why this work is important and why rooms like this need to happen more often. So I spent my 20s in the United States. You know, like when I'm in America, I'm definitely a person of color. And then I was really lucky. I got to go to India for a few years. I never lived in the motherland as an adult. It was amazing. I could throw my weight around. I could get work done. And I was no longer brown. And that was something that really changed my life, but I didn't realize how much it changed my life until I came back. And I was like, oh, I forgot racism exists in America. And I moved to Seattle, and I was once again in this place where people were asking me where I was from. People were questioning my abilities and my credentials. People were asking me to take notes in a meeting that I was running. And so, you know, I think that Sage and I, we bring really different experiences. She's Native Hawaiian. I've had a really global upbringing, and I think what's true for me is that I'm only ever a person of color when I'm here. And that has to change. Like, I would love to just be a person and not have of color. Yeah, thank you. Many people, I think many immigrants can identify with that experience. So this is a report. What stuck out to me in this is that it says progress on gender diversity at work has stalled. And I was like, what? This is 2018. This is the end of 2018. What are you telling me? It's stalled. And we can't have that. Like, we can't really have that, because otherwise we go back to this mode. How many of you have been in a room like this just in the last week or month? Right? This is Joanne Morgan. She was the only woman in the room during the Apollo liftoff. Not much has changed. How about this? How many of you have been on a team like this? Lots of folks. The woman right in the middle, her name is Janice Lawson, and she was the first African-American woman hired by NASA's JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, in a technical role, so like not an administrative role, but like really as an engineer. And the thing is that like this is kind of still happening in America. But on the other side is the fact that organizations like McKinsey, PayScale, Mercer, Hired, are starting to generate tons of research about experiences of women at work, and in particular women of color at work. And they're highlighting some really positive trends, and we'll talk about some of those today. But they're also giving us some ammunition to bust some myths. And Jody Ann started the conversation today about the wage gap, and so how many of you have seen some of these kinds of graphics about the wage gap? A few of you, right? And it is true. It is true that women earn less than men, and it's true that women of color earn less than white women. What's also true that East Asian women earn more than both white men and white women, and you can guess as to why that is. We're working in typically high-paying professions like law and finance and medicine and in tech, and those tend to be higher-paying jobs. But I think what we all know is that most women of color are not working in those sectors, and in fact, women of color in America are 20% of the overall population today. Will actually be the majority in 2 decades. Hari Kondabolu has a skit called 2042, Waiting for 2042, when America goes brown. Yeah, I think it's on YouTube. He's very funny. So women of color, we're 20% of the population, but we hold 50% of all of the lowest wage work, and it's work like working front lines in retail and domestic work, in hospitality. We're doing a lot of work in professions that have really, really limited opportunity for upward mobility. And as we started looking into this, we realized that, like, yes, this is a vicious cycle if you don't see role models, if you're not tempted to do the thing. Like, if I see someone eating like a grasshopper, I'm like, yeah, I'll order that. But if I never saw that, I'd be like, is this food? Question mark. So this is not a new problem for women, and I brought a story to share with you today, which you may or may not find humorous. This is like the caveat of like the nerdy, introverted person, like my sense of humor doesn't always align with everybody else's sense of humor. But I do want to share a story about a woman, and she's not American, she's not a woman of color, but I hope that some pieces of it resonates with you. So here she is. This is from the early 1700s. So we're going to take it back 300 years, and you'll see why in just a second. But what's worth noting is that in 1700s, and 10% of all astronomers, like people that are like looking out into space, are women in Germany. So hang on to that 10%, right? That's a pretty big chunk. Like I didn't know that was like such a profession for women in the 1700s. And the story is about this woman. Her name is Maria Winkelmann, and Maria and her husband Gottfried both work at the Royal Academy of Sciences. He's the boss, she's his assistant. She's just as good as he is, and like she's quite famous for discovering a bunch of comets. And I won't talk about them because I don't know anything about comets. But like all I'm gonna say is that she's really smart, and she is like his right-hand person, and she's doing a lot of his work. And we fast forward a little bit, he dies. Men, I think, do die sooner than women, but also he's 30 years older than her. So she married like a slightly older man, and just a little small age gap. So he dies, and Maria's like, well, I've been doing all this work this whole time anyways, and she applies for his job. And can you imagine what happens next?
They give it to her.
They didn't give it to her. They literally didn't give it to her. They were like, no, we're not gonna ruin our reputation by giving a job to a woman, like, whatever. But who they give the job to is really interesting. So a few years later, they give the job to her son, and they hire her as his assistant. This is the opportunity gap for women. So they have her on payroll, they rely on her expertise, they never pay her the boss's salary. And 300 years later, Germany has far fewer stargazers. The impact of this moment, like this really, really critical moment for women in science, didn't stop in Germany. 300 years later, 320 years later, there are no female heads of labs anywhere in the world. So there are no female astronomy? Conjugation? Anywhere in the world. And of the people that have been to space, only 11% have been women. And I think all of us were like tracking the not enough space suits for women, and you're like, how many are going up there? And they're like, 2. We don't have 2 spacesuits for women. But what's interesting to note as well in this moment is that like Germany has never sent a woman to space. So I share this story, even though it's not about a woman of color, because the decisions that we make today, like right here, right now, in real time, have consequences that we can't imagine. And so keeping women of color out of leadership roles, keeping women of color out of high-paying professions has consequences that may last decades, but I think in this instance, like 300 years later, we're still like trying to get up to that 10% number. Another example of this that's really, really notable is the fact that there has been a steady decline in the number of Black, Latina, and Native women in computer science. And so in the last 30 years, you know, that number has gone down. Only 3% of graduates are Black, Latina, and Native women combined of all of the computer science graduates in America. And as a result, we only have 2 Black women that head big publicly traded companies. One is Ursula Burns, she's the CEO of Xerox, and the other person is Melanie Hobson, she's the head of Ariel Investments. And we think that this is not just a problem for women, it's not like we made less money, it's actually a problem for the economy because we do the spending of the money as well. Also, we share some of this information with you because as we start to move into this future of work conversation, there is so much talk about automation. There's so much talk about the wage gap. There's a lot of talk about like skilled workers and unskilled workers and the war for talent. And as organizations start to think about building solutions, we worry that by not focusing on some of the root causes of the challenges that women of color face, we're not building solutions with us in mind. So I want to share with you sort of 3 insights that we're having as future for us. Take it home. Also, if you don't agree, like come talk to me and I'll fix my presentation. We need to do this work armed with data, and I say that not because I'm a nerd, but because data really matters. And one of the ways in which data is going to really matter to all of us here, whether you're a woman of color or not, is that next year there is going to be a massive data collection endeavor. Do you guys know what that is? It's the census. The census is going to happen. It's going to happen next year. And one of the worries is that people of color are going to be undercounted in the census because of the kinds of questions they're asking, because of the way in which they're looking to conduct the census. And that is going to have a direct consequence for the next 10 years because the government, the federal government, allocates tons and tons of funding to projects and programs. And if they don't count us, then they don't have to fund us. Simply put. So data really matters and solutions need to be bold, they need to be out of the box. The first insight I want to share with you is that bias starts really early. And if you're a person of color, you already know that bias starts long before you've entered the workforce. One of the things that, you know, as a former educator that I have found interesting living in Seattle is that 2 of the wealthiest people in the world live in Seattle. And Seattle has some of the largest opportunity gaps between Black kids and white kids. Some of that is also true, I believe, here in Los Angeles. So what that does is that the bias that starts early in education and creates those gaps also sort of tracks us into when we get to work. And PayScale, which is a partner company of ours, they've been doing a lot of research that shows that bias seeps in really, really deeply when it comes time to performance reviews, as well as pay increase decisions. And so a solution that often gets talked about is, hey, like let's go to a salary negotiation workshop, right? It's very much in vogue. We do some of that work as well at Future for Us. But the thing is that people of all races ask for pay increases equally, but women of color are 20% less likely to get a raise. And that's a pretty big number, 20%. So we know that education and self-advocacy are not enough anymore for women of color to rise. The second is that that there's a lot of isolation. Some of it is sector specific. We don't always know people that work in other industries, and some of it is social. And later on, Sage is going to talk a little bit more about the social piece of it. Earlier I told you that women of color are 20% of the population, and we're doing 50% of all of the lowest wage work, which honestly is in sectors where there's such limited opportunity for upward mobility. But in the world of family sustaining jobs, and like this is a buzzword that is very trendy, so take it back to your employer. You can say, I would like a family sustaining wage, please. So family sustaining is just a buzzword for a job that like lets you pay rent, you buy your own groceries, and then like maybe you have like a chance to save for retirement, right? So that's all family sustaining means. But in jobs that are considered that, 85% of new hires come in by way of referrals. I actually didn't know that. I really had no idea that that was true, that 85% of roles are filled through referrals. And what's interesting is that when men make referrals, they can expect roughly $80 to $100 in a salary increase. That's like a very nice vacation, or like a really chunky down payment on a new car, or I don't know what $8,000 buys you anymore. Rent for half a year, maybe a quarter of a year in Seattle. 2 months of rent in LA. Learning so much. Learning so much. I thought it was hard for us in Seattle. But when women make referrals, they can expect only about $3,700, which if you are like the math type, you know that that's more than 50% less. It's 55% less than men. But what we found on top of that is that women of color are 35% less likely both to receive the referrals and to actually get any bonuses from having made the referrals. I know there's a woman in the back, she's like, no, please stop. So what we're doing is we're actually helping our companies bring in diverse talent, and we're not getting compensated for it. Just imagine if we got referrals and jobs and bonuses at the same rate as our white peers. Part of the isolation is also because we can't always be ourselves at work. So Catalyst is an incredible organization. They do a lot of research about women at work in general, and their research shows that about 21% of women of color don't think they can be themselves at work. But what's even more striking is that almost 50% of women of color believe they need to downplay their race or ethnicity in order to feel successful at work. Does it resonate with folks in here? Are these numbers? No? Maybe? And for so many reasons, we're not really bringing our full selves to work, and we're also not sharing like all of the badass things and our side hustles that we're up to when we're not at work. All right, the last thing I want to talk about, and maybe you thought I wouldn't talk about it. I think we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it, right? Yes? Yes. All right, we'll talk about it. So we know that race is becoming increasingly contentious. When I'm traveling, I'm often wearing my hair straight these days because I don't want to wear it curly, which is how it really is. Because I just don't want to get in the middle of anything with anyone. And like that for me, you know, is just like coming back to research is that women of color get harassed more than any other group in work. And not only are we getting harassed based on our appearance, but we're also getting harassed for participating in affinity groups, and we're getting harassed for having side hustles, especially if we get recognition for doing that work. Some ladies in the back, they're like, I'm having this problem right now. We will problem solve it later. We're also judged at work, and I'm not talking about like your lipstick shade, but we're often, our experience is judged and criticized. We have credentials, and folks are like, did you really get that degree? And that's happening all the time. We also know that like women of color, but Black women in particular, have little to no visibility to senior leadership, and that's actually one of the best ways to rise in your career. Here's a stat about like having your judgment or your expertise questioned. This is from the McKinsey report again, and you will notice that Black and Latino women have like disproportionately have their judgment questioned at work. So we started with this. We know that until we have liberation for all, we have liberation for none. So we are really, really, when we talk about race, we're not interested in having the conversation anymore about white fragility or implicit bias. Like those things are happening all the time. But really, the conversation that we want to have is like, how do we move forward always? And we want to be done with these kinds of diversity initiatives. Maybe you work at a company that just put out a really great statement or like pulled you in for a photo shoot because you're like the only diverse employee that works there. Some people, was it today? So it's just a great activity for a Wednesday afternoon. We need to ask companies that we work at and that we work with, to put out more balanced sort of reports, to like start capturing more interesting information. Here's one from Slack. Has anybody used Slack in this room? A bunch of people have. They're an incredible company in large part because they share deeply about like who is doing the work in their organization and have really transparent breakdowns of people of color by gender, race, ethnicity, the whole lot of it. We also found in our work this really great report by a Boston Consulting Group. And in the report, the thing that stood out to me, the title of the report for people in the back, it says, "Fixing the Flawed Approach to Diversity." They literally have a quote in there that says, and they're talking about white men in their mid-40s. They say, "They launch programs that they think will yield improvements, but their decisions are based on gut instinct rather than proven results." Like, thank you, men, white men, for that. And then just today, Weber Shandwick launched a report on chief diversity officers, and like these are the people in organizations that are supposed to be out like fighting for us and rooting for us and building programs for us. And they found something that I think is like a known fact to so many of us, is that most of those people are white and they're largely female. And so, I really think, and I hope you do too, that it's time that the people that are decision makers share our experiences, they share our values, and they start to look more like us. We need initiatives to focus specifically on the needs of women of color, not just women at large. And we need to start collecting data to ground our strategy. This is the end of my bit. Like if I could just, say one thing, I would say that we have the tools to do better. Like we have the data, we have the knowledge, but it's about how we come together and start accelerating the advancement of women of color at work. So I'm gonna pass the mic back to Sage, and she's gonna share solutions, and we're gonna move out of the space of like, ugh, to like a space of like, yes, anything is possible. Thank you.
Hello, awesome guys. I know that was heavy. It wasn't that heavy. And you're like, I already know that. I'm feeling that right now. So for Future for Us, we believe that women of color need to value and invest in our three key pillars: community, culture, and career. So first off is our beautiful community. So when women of color start investing in each other and making sure that we are talking to each other beyond race, identity, and industry, that's when we start being powerful, and that's when we are like the new Destiny's Child, right? Like we are just unstoppable. So that's when we talk about communities. Your network is your net worth, guys. Network is your net worth. So it is key for every single one of you to talk to somebody new today, because this is what we're talking about. Future for Us is we are going on a national tour, so this connection can continue further on. And looking at you guys, I already want to make deals with you. So add me on LinkedIn, we're looking for deals. Another example is Fenty Beauty. So bad girl Riri, Rihanna, you guys know that. Some of you guys have Fenty on. She has cleverly and strategically built a community that is inclusive and also thinking about intersectionality of the markets, right? Men, women, non-binary folks, and that's what you talk about leveraging community. This is an example of an Oath ERG group, and this group has helped. And ERG groups, who's a part of ERG groups? There are employment resource groups, only a couple of you guys, yeah. So within companies, these are groups that leverage a lot of change within policies. So paid leave, what else? Childcare, having nursing rooms in companies. So these are some things you really need to take note of. And if you are a part of an ERG group, you have to be mindful that sometimes this is not promotable work. So being cognizant of what is something that's promotable. Another way to take advantage of your community is professional community. So lean in, elevate women in digital, lesbians who tech, the crew. Being a part of these networking communities is huge. And also personal communities. I know, Issa Rae fans out here, insecure. So think about who are the people you're being surrounded around and who's not in your circles. And if whoever's not in your circles, how do you ask people who don't have that opportunity to join you? So personal networks is huge in terms of advancing yourself at work. Like Aparna said, 85% of jobs are by referrals. And if white men keep nominating more white men, this is what we have today. So we need to all connect with each other, leverage our communities, and also refer each other for deals and everything else. The memo. So Minda Harts, have you guys heard of Minda Harts? Minda Harts is the author of The Memo, How Women of Color Can Secure a Seat at the Table. And she says, we need to build tables that suit our needs or addressing our needs. And that's what we feel like what's happening today. So if you can get that book, The Memo, please, please, please buy it and purchase it. She is on tour right now. Second is culture. So how do we talk about culture? Your state, California, has the first to become to ban discrimination based on natural hair. Isn't that in 2019? It's about time. And to have that is huge. And what we try to talk about, like how do we celebrate and also make sure women of color are being celebrated within companies? One, do not ask anyone to downplay their race and ethnicity. Kind of no-brainer, but you kind of have to tell these people. Aparna and I, we talk about inclusion everywhere, and we have to literally say this. Two, diversify your intake of media and entertainment. So when you're talking about consuming information, podcasts, books, television, really be mindful and cognizant of what are you intaking? Is it coming from a diverse perspective? This is a co-founder of Choosy, and she's an Asian American entrepreneur who has leveraged her culture because Asian American culture, it's weird that you eat by yourself. Who's ate at their desk alone by themselves? A lot of us. And that's the culture that right now and today. And she has built a company to change companies in the Bay Area so people won't eat alone. Another shining example is our 114th congressional class. Ilhan Omar, who rocks her hijab on the job. AOC, who rocks her freaking red lipstick and her hoops. They are redefining what it means to be a congresswoman, right? And also changing policies and advancing women. And we cannot forget Senator Tammy Duckworth, who brought her baby for the first time in history on the Senate floor. These are transformative moments in history that women of color are pretty much happening right now. And third and final is career. Who knows these two women up here? Some of you guys? Okay, so Indra Nooyi is the CEO and president of PepsiCo, and this is Rosalind Brewer, the COO of Starbucks. What the similarity between these two is that they just joined the board of Amazon. And we are going to see the change they are going to have on not only the business of Amazon, but how they hire and retain diverse talent. So we're really excited for that. And these are kind of the tips that we want to have you guys take home today. Cultivate relationships with other women of color, and that is tonight, guys. Learn from other women of color leaders, so essential. So identify the influential women of color leaders that you have in your lives, in your industry, and take their advice. Carla Harris is the managing partner of Morgan Stanley, badass woman of color who has climbed the corporate ladder. and she has really phenomenal tips. So her podcast is, I think it's her Pearls. So really look up, what's it? Carla's Pearls, yes, Carla's Pearls. And she has, I've seen her talk many of times, and she is phenomenal. So please look her up. And lastly is commit to using data. Data. Don't be an old white guy making decisions on gut instincts. Yes, use your instincts, but also back it up with data, because you know why? We're going to be questioned at the table anyways. So you better be coming armed with data. And last but not least is use your position, power, and privilege. Be a mentor, be a sponsor, be a co-conspirator, and be a success partner for somebody else, especially another woman of color. Please do that. Women of color are, changing the face of entrepreneurship. Women of color are changing what it is, what a CEO looks like. Women of color, we're gonna rule the world. This is a photo of both Arlan Hamilton and myself at the Philadelphia North Star Conference, and that's kind of what we're here today. Her famous quote, "I came for the cake, not the crumbs." And with that quote, I would love to bring Arlan Hamilton, the managing partner of Backstage Capital, to the stage. Everybody get up! Everybody, let's get up! Let's get up! I got a hug, guys. Sorry, freaking out. Here goes. Oh my God! This is like a Super Soul Sunday. Oh man, this is crazy. Sorry. Whew. Okay, I'm gonna calm down because I'm gonna be weird, and we don't need this for the cameras, anyways. Okay, this has been my big moment, guys. This is my big moment. So I've been stalking Arlan Hamilton for about a year now. She knows this. True story. And Arlan, you've been a hero to me, and so many other entrepreneurs and people and women of color here to see you today. And I know we talked a lot about data and what's the challenges of women of color at work, but we want to frame this, as the opportunity. What is our opportunity in advancing? And I really want to talk about what you're up to, and for somebody who's new in this conversation, because we want to be inclusive. Well, let me put this up. Hold on. Let me see. Sorry, we gotta put this on here. We gotta make sure the Fast Company is on here, okay? Because I love it. So for the people who are new to this conversation, what's Backstage Capital? What has inspired you to build it?
Thank you. Well, thank you for your enthusiasm, and from the moment I met you in Philadelphia a year ago.
I was a little crazy. I was like, I got here, sign my Fast Company cover, please.
Thank you for that. It's touching, and so Backstage Capital, for anyone who doesn't know, is the venture fund that I started a few years ago, officially 4 years ago. Actually, we just celebrated our 4-year official anniversary, September 15th, so just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And started it, you asked what inspired it. The people in this room. Like, look around this room, this is what I imagined the tech world and the business world and all of that could look like. And was already looking like, but people were kind of overlooking, the investors were overlooking. So we are a boutique venture fund that invests in the top entrepreneurs that we source, find, and back, who are women, people of color, and LGBTQ, or any combination thereof. And in the last 4 years, we've seen about 6,000 of them, give or take a few, and invested in about 130, 25,000 to 100,000 at a time. And most recently, I was able to lead a round that was a $3 million round where I brought in Mark Cuban and Serena Williams to join that round, and that was Mommy, the company Mommy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And you inspired me. were waiting for me, so it was good.
Sorry, guys. Fangirldom. So
Is there a doctor in the house? Because she's not kidding up here. This is very physical that's happening.
oh my gosh, this is too much. I'm so embarrassed. We talked about, your inspiration behind it. And Minda Hart's the author of the memo. She talks about success partners. I know that you're, there's a lot of people who are involved in building your, helping you build your company, and also the people you run. I saw her at the conference, and her whole squad, literally, she had like 10 people, guys, following her and getting everything done. I'm like, wow. So I want to kind of.
I was following them. You're following them. For real, that's our crew.
Yes. So I just want to know a little bit more about your, who are your success partners, and what does that look like? How have they helped you?
It's looked like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I consider that to be our crew, our team that is various sizes depending on when it's been. But Chacho is here. Where's Chacho? Where'd you go? You leaving? Okay. He's right there. Chacho's here. Stand up, Chacho. Stand up.
Yay!
Yeah, so he's on our team. He's from Detroit. He flew in to support tonight. And so our team. Then it really comes down to the founders. I mean, the founders themselves. I have heard the founders themselves in our portfolio say that a lot of their goals is to be able to be successful, to turn around and be the investors in the next Backstage fund. And they said that on their own and have come to me with that. And I was like, yeah, that's a dream, right? And then the people who have invested in us, especially those who started early, who came in early, and then our brand partners and people like that who actually, it does take a little bit of bravery to be at a big corporation and kind of push to back companies like ours. And then the community at large, anyone who shows up to events like this, people like you who are spearheading, movements. And I love how you were just giving everybody a shout out. That's what this is about.
Yeah, it's all about that, guys. Oof. I think especially when I see you being, this was really momentous for me when she was speaking at the North Star Conference in Philadelphia, which is a Black and Brown Founders organization. She gave the opportunity to tell like a big news about your accelerator program. She didn't announce it. She gave it to her team to announce it, right? And that's a big media opportunity and moment. But she didn't do it. She told your directors to do it. And I think how many entrepreneurs out there, right? Let's raise your hands. I'll raise them up high. Arlan Hamilton's here. Exactly. We have to stop being like, oh me. Be like, hell yeah, right here. Because especially being an entrepreneur and being a founder, sometimes your ego, right? And she just went up and was like, they have something to say. And that to me really showed your leadership at that time, announcing your accelerator program. And that is huge. And moving on to, since we identified the entrepreneurs in this room, there's a lot of noise about what VCs are funding and not funding, and what is a VC scalable company. What are the top 3 things that you identify with companies pitching you? What are the things that you look for when companies come to you for for example, so I know that the Serena Williams and Mark Cuban deal, a woman of color who, creating an app for maternal health, that's huge, right? Because that's something that's facing us as women of color. So I want to know about the 3 things you look for when people approach you and pitch you.
Yeah, so Mommy was a second or third investment actually, because we've been with them for a while. I think, it varies and it really just depends on the time, like the moment, right? A lot of it is about timing, and I don't know if people realize that as much as we probably should, is that a lot of times it may be that the exact same pitch and the exact same thing you're talking about pitched 3 months or a year later is right at the right time for things. And I don't really get to talk about that as much, so it does depend, and unfortunately there is no line by line, you know, if you do this, you get in, because if there were, everybody, it'd be like Oprah, yeah, you get a check. If you look at your check, you'll find the check. Unfortunately, yeah, somebody's looking.
Yeah.
She's like, just in case,
Just
so I'm
in
not
case.
gonna. I mean, but ultimately, it really, you know, you mentioned mommy, it really is like the holistic story of it all is the big thing, is not only the story, obviously, but it's like the why. Why is this person doing it? Why them, and why are they driven to do it? But many people come up to me with that, which is, you know, this is a pain, and I love pain point companies, by the way. I love companies where it's not you just went out looking for something that seemed like it would work and you're glomming onto it. It's more like, this is a pain point. This is something I have either seen myself personally, or someone in my family, or someone that I know, or we at large, you know, have this pain point. I love that. But there are many people who do that. It's the people who execute on something. And so many people who I meet, and I go all over the country and all over parts of the world, they're so enthusiastic, and I can see the passion, and I totally love that. But you gotta understand, you're talking to someone who like acts, you know, who does things, and also has a portfolio full of people who do things. So it's like, you don't have to have any money, but what have you done? What have you done before you walk in front of someone asking them to give you money? And it doesn't have to be this huge thing where I raise this much, or I have this many thousands of customers. You will be surprised as to how many people have not even talked to their potential customers to validate what they're doing, because they think they're in their heads, and they're in there too much, and they think, if I think it's a great idea, and I've seen a couple of examples of it being a great idea, it's gonna work, I know it. So it really is that, what reality check have you given yourself? You gotta have the reality check before the capital check. I'm just making something up, I'm workshopping it, if you will. I don't know, there's something that rhymes in there. There's that, and so it's just a kind of an understanding of what you have been able to accomplish on your own, whatever, it doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be glossy, it has to be something though. And it's that, and there's a certain confidence and conviction that someone has, like there's this glimmer that I can see. And that does not mean necessarily someone who is a confident person or who is an outspoken person. That can come, a great example is, I shouldn't say that transition, I don't mean it like this, but Melissa from Mommy is not a loud person. She is a very soft-spoken, kind of introverted person, but you can tell that she knows her numbers, and she, like you say, data, she knows her points, and she knows why she's doing this. And you have to kind of have that something to kind of sell your story. You just have to be able to, and it doesn't mean that you have to be, again, it's not, for me, it's not gloss. I don't need you to be perfect, I don't need you to be well rehearsed, I don't need any of that, but I need you to be able to express it to me. So you can pull me in, you know. And then if you're working on something really bold and big, and that it's not, I use the example of, it's not another way to get me a cupcake delivered. Please don't ever take that away from me, though. Because that's awesome. But, you know, maybe certain sort of saturated markets, you start to wonder, it goes back to the why. It's like, why are they doing that if there are so many others like that? Why are they trying to be just a better version of this other thing? Is it really something that they're going to go after for 10 years, do the ups and downs, etc.? So it's that sort of drive that helps you determine stamina and grit.
Wow, I hope you guys all took those notes right there, right? Yeah. Timing, knowing your numbers, the why, the passion, but also like solid knowing your numbers and a big idea. That's huge. I'm over here just like, I'm about to cry because I'm writing these notes in my phone right now. That's huge. And I've been following you, you know, when I see you go out and talk to other founders, I can see the energy and like they're just like excited to meet you and like really pitch you. And a lot of the times, you know, I think some of you guys are first gen immigrant from around, you know, not from here, and there's other people who are not coming from wealth, you know, like, and how do you pitch yourself and get these resources to do, you know, to start a company? You know, I think a lot of the times, like, I come from a working class family from Hawaii, and finding the resources that we need to get for Future for us, it's been, it takes that much to get anywhere we need to be. I know that VC money does take you to the next level, but I think, you know, what has helped you along this journey, and what is that thing that keeps you going, you know?
Yeah, I agree that, yeah, sometimes, in some cases, venture capital can take you to the next level. There's certain companies where that is the case. But you've seen recently with these IPOs and like companies that have been funded out the wazoo are still struggling, and more than struggling in some cases. It's not the end all. It shouldn't necessarily be your only option to chase venture money. It may be something that it is tempting to say, well, I'd like $1 million. Yeah, I'll take $500,000. I'll take that to help me, but think about what you're also giving up in equity and so on. I think it's too long of an answer to give now of how do you raise the money. But I think one thing that we can all do, and I practice this, I try to practice what I preach. What has helped me in the past, and I think helps, let's say 70% of the people know. Maybe 30% is just not gonna work because your particular company needs a certain type of funding. But for 70%, give or take, repurposing what you need and what success means and what it will take to get there is everything. Because let's say, for instance, you have in your mind right now, I need to raise $250,000. I need to raise $250,000. I can't tell you how many emails I get in a week that say, I need, or, you know, will you buy this for me? And no, but, or this and that, I need. And I think about it, and the one thing that I haven't really, but I don't think I've said it ever on a stage or anything, but I'm gonna say it right now. And I don't want to belittle anyone, and I'm not trying to do that, but I'm saying it to myself and to us. I'm going to say it, I'm going to choose my words carefully. No one is forcing us to do this. No one is forcing you to start the company. This is an opportunity. So why would you start in a position of stress? And in a position of being beholden to someone else? And in a position of, why would you start in that position when today, if you have no investors, today, I envy you, because today you own 100% of your company and your IP and etc. So why would you, out the gate, put yourself in a position where I need 250? Figure out a way not to need 250. And then you have immediately taken your control back and your life back in some ways, because you're not out here and this has become this thing. And so I think I think some of the best use of time is in the thinking and in the strategizing rather than the doing. I was facing a challenge earlier, like over the weekend, and early this weekend, I was trying to work at it and kind of, you know, chip away at the challenge. And I had a deadline and a certain amount of time to finish it, and I was not going to finish it. And I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And what I did was, I said, wait a second, let me stop. So I stopped, and I spent about 2 of the precious hours that I really only had, 2 of them, on thinking through a hack that would solve the problem rather than trying to spend all the energy on the problem itself. Stepping away from the problem. And I tell you, I figured it out on Sunday night. I figured it out. And so now, the problem has been turned into it's been made smaller. And so there's less to do, and I've hacked it. And so I think if the 70%, of us go home tonight, and you say, okay, if I'm going to spend the next 5 days working on the company, that's what I do every week. You say, wait a minute, let me take 2 of those days just to think. Use it to imagine your world in a year, imagine your world in 5 years, and say, what is good enough for me? What works for me? Do I really require all those things that I thought I did? So you balance it, you take some off this side and put some on this side, balance it. You may take less money and you may sacrifice speed. Okay, we'll take an extra year. Cool. I got an extra year. I'll go, and they'll do that. And it just turns everything on its head. You put yourself in a position of leverage, which is one of the most important things you could do.
Wow, position of leverage, guys. And when she talks about giving yourself time to think about your company, this moment wouldn't happen because right before, Christmas, I was by myself thinking a lot about, a partner and I were starting this company, and I was sitting, listening to Lauryn Hill, like Unplugged MTV, man, like in my zone, just thinking about this is a big moment in our lives to really sacrifice to start a company. I just thought, I took some time and I thought, what do I want my life to look like next year? And I wrote on my IG story and I said, I want to interview Arlan Hamilton in 2019. And I tagged her. And she DM'd back saying, let's make it happen, guys. So this moment here, you made it happen, we made it happen, the river made it happen. And this is what I'm talking about, giving the time and the space for you to dream about what your future should be and what you don't need to have, and also what you want to have and manifest. And I know you guys are super excited to, we're gonna move on to the Q&A portion. I think somebody's gonna grab the mic. I know we have some excited entrepreneurs, so if you have a question, please raise your hand. Let's start for the top over here. Oh yeah, we got the mic here.
Now I have Lauryn Hill in my head. That last one's in my head,
Yeah?
Right here.
Hi, I'm Arshia, and I am also a crazy fangirl.
It's all good.
You came to my school when I was studying, and I missed you by a day, and since then I obviously obsess about you.
Okay,
And,
fair enough.
I think my question is, in your podcast, you talk about, first of all, discovering your value and understanding your value and not settling for mediocrity. And in another episode, you talk about quality and about making sure that what you offer to the world when you're going shopping, when you take your wares out, for it not to be finished, but to have quality. And it set off a lot of questions in my mind, but I wanted to understand from you through your experience and experience with mediocrity to sort of make it more sort of less abstract and with experience with quality.
Yeah, so she's referring, thank you very much. You're referring to Your First Million, which is a podcast that I started early summer, and I'm loving every minute of it, so I encourage you to subscribe. Yeah, it's so much fun. And, does anybody listen to it? Oh, that's so cool. Yes. So Your First Million, we just dropped an episode today. So, I was saying in one of I do these bonus episodes where I just kind of talk into the phone or talk into the mic and just have a word with everybody. And I say that you have to, once you understand your value, mediocrity is no longer an option for you. And I it's hard for me to find one pinpoint, but I would say that just a state of being. It took me until I was about 37 to understand, and I'm 38. Yeah, I'll be 39 in a month. So it took me most of my life to just understand how to charge for my expertise, or what to say yes and no to, and all that. And so it's like Nicki Minaj once said that if she went to this, I'm gonna start rambling, y'all. She went to this photo shoot once. Anybody know that story? No, she went to a photo shoot once a long time ago, and she got there, and she's Nicki Minaj, whatever, and they had, for the craft services, they had pickle juice as one of the options, because it was such a cheap situation. And they expected her to be at her best, but they were serving pickle juice. And she stormed out, and they called her all kinds of names in the press, and she, whatever. But she said, and I'll never forget, she said, if I had settled for the pickle juice, I'd be drinking pickle juice today. Right? So she was able to set her standard. And so just kind of, in the ways that I've let people treat me in the past, or not getting to the point where I was charging the right thing for something that I now understand, whether it be the magazine that I used to publish, where I was charging $5 for a $15 magazine, but I didn't realize it, underselling myself, undercutting myself, those types of things. Quality is every day at Backstage. It's what we strive for every day at Backstage, and it's in the hundreds and hundreds of inbound requests that I receive in a given week, and in the 3 that I'll say yes to. It's in that, and then understanding what our time, all of our time, is worth. Hope that was helpful. You still looking for the check?
I'm always looking for
You
the check.
find
Thank
me,
you.
you know, we split. Hello.
Hello, my name is Stephanie.
Hey.
I'm a Grid 110 company, so shout out to them.
Oh, cool.
A couple of your team members came and spoke to us for the last
Yeah, that's great.
So I wanted to know, you spoke a little bit about companies that don't necessarily need capital, like myself, or may not think they need capital. What would you say to entrepreneurs that obviously need money, but not necessarily VC money or angel money, but are still trying to scale? Because when I was listening to your team members at Backstage present to us, all I kept thinking was, no, I don't need VC money. But then the next day I was like, oh, but I absolutely need money. I have marketing and I'm building an app and all these things. But where's the in between? And I mean, besides hustling, what's the answer?
I mean, part of it is not knowing your company at all. Some of it is in revenue. Some of it is in you need an app. There are millions and hundreds of thousands of students. There are millions of people. There are people in this room maybe, or in somewhere else you go, where they all they know how to do is code. All they know how to do, but they don't know how to sell. But they don't know how to sell, or they don't know how to craft a story because it's not their personality type. And to me, it's like it's about like like turning over every stone before you get to the point where you have to go out, because it really is. I mean, the last episode that dropped this morning is Delane Parnell from Play Versus. He is a black man, 27 years old, who just raised an additional $50 million on top of the $45 million that he raised in the last 12, 13 months. That sounds amazing, right? One of the first things he said on that podcast was, that's more equity out of my hand. It's great, we can go, and he's excited, he's ready for the next decade. But he made it very clear, and you reading between the lines if you listen to it, which I did in the room, which is, that keeps him up in that a little bit. Because maybe he could have gone a different route, raised less, or did a different kind of bootstrapping situation, and owned more, and maybe it wouldn't be this rocket, but maybe it would have been, this other thing. So I think it goes back to like this creativity of, and then also the understanding of we don't, I hope no one's being forced to. If anybody's being forced, you blink twice and I'll come get you. I'll swoop you up. But, I'm just kind of, making it lighthearted. I'm not taking away from, I know what that is. That like, I have to do this. I have to, and I understand that. But there's these steps you can take, I think, where it's, like, that's a skill. Like, building an app is a skill. Can you not offer 5% of your company to a new co-founder who can code? Can you not save for 6 months, a little at a time, and hire a third party to build it and hold on to that? Is there not another option that doesn't put you in this position where you have to immediately go, in this crazy world, find $100,000? Yeah. I'm not going to choose. It's too difficult, so I'll let you choose.
people talking about, obviously charging what you're worth and things like that. But what about when you have a business model or idea that wants to benefit people from marginalized communities, and these people cannot necessarily afford to pay the premium, but like your value, but you also want to provide resources. Like how do you?
Oh, I mean, I do that all the time. Like, I will not let a corporation lowball me on a speaking fee that's ridiculous amount of money. It's just stupid. It's more than I've ever made in a year before this, so that I can volunteer at Sage's event and all day. And you'll get me longer than you'll get me at Salesforce or somewhere else. When I say know your value, I don't mean I mean know your value. And so you may. It's also another example is a Tesla kind of model. Don't think about the people, but the Tesla. No shade to anybody who works there, but it's like they built the expensive thing so that it can be more mainstream down the line. That was at least the original thought was build the expensive thing to be able to eventually afford the thing that more people have access to. And so knowing your value only makes that part easier, because you say, well, if this group can afford it, then that's what I'm charging them. Now, if everything you're going towards is that, then maybe you have to rethink your model completely, because like I said, underrepresented doesn't mean down and out. So it's not like nobody can pay or whatever, but maybe your model has to change a little bit more to a more kind of consumer-based and more the subscription model, whatever it is. I have no idea what the company is. But yeah, knowing your value is charging what you're worth and stockpiling that if that's the way you want to do it. It's like Karen Walker on Will and Grace. She would get paid and she would never cash a check, but she wasn't not going to get paid. Right? Yes. I think this side needs some love.
I love Will and Grace.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kim. I can't believe I'm even asking this question, but I'm more interested in the investing side, and I'm very big on the real estate side and trying to get more women and women of color to invest either short-term or equity debt or long-term. And I've raised capital for my own investments in the past, but it's exclusively from Black women. Like, my goal is to invest or to raise capital from women of color.
We're gonna have somebody escort you out. Everybody in the room is like, what did you say about what?
But this is the problem. It actually takes me so long to raise the money because I'm doing all of the educating, all of the kind of getting people to understand. And frankly, I don't even need the money. I just want them to learn how to invest. What are the steps? What are the things that get our team, our people, to get more confident and comfortable with starting to think about investing outside of just their 401k?
Oh yeah, that's a huge question. I mean,
Right.
that's a whole, that's an entire lane, right? And in fact, I think on Friday on Friday I'm speaking about to women of color about investing, because it's like Macy Peterson is a woman you all should look up. She's she's a portfolio headliner, we call them headliners, and she's on this mission to get more women of color, specifically Black women, to invest, who don't even know that they're angel investors. If you make $200,000 or more a year, or $300,000 with your spouse, or you have $1 million in assets, not including your main home, you are an accredited investor without having to get any sort of certification. And that means you can invest in private companies and at a kind of no cap. And then there's other sort of crowd equity funding that anyone can do at a certain at a cap. And so I think it's layers of it. I think what's probably going to happen, you mentioned The Memo, which is a great book, and many other books. I think what's going to probably have to happen is, like, Jason Calacanis wrote this book about angel investing. It's 84% of it is good. 16% of it is just really tone deaf, but 84% of it is really good, right? And I think, and it kind of galvanized a lot of people that he was focusing on to become angel investors. I think you're going to have some, I think media plays a huge part in that. It's not just us talking about it. I think it's like a few things. It's like the work that Backstage is doing, the work that you're doing. It's also a book coming out that's a manual. It's also maybe some sort of TV show or podcast or movie that comes out that kind of stirs the imagination. And I think that's what's good. It's going to start taking that, and you have more and more people are seeing it now because they see, oh, like LeBron James has a VC fund, and Jay-Z has and Beyonce's investing, and Serena's investing. I think that announcement of Serena investing, even though she's been doing it for like 5 years, stealth, that announcement made some people say, oh, I want to see what that is, you know. I think you're going to start seeing the fruits of that. I'll use this time to do it's not shame, it is shameless, yes, absolutely. Plug. I have a book coming out next. Yeah. It is scheduled to come out next May, and we'll get into pre-order in the next few weeks here. So, you know, that's going to be, a lot of that's just going to be, you know, just me talking about some life experiences and kind of applying it to the things, but I'm trying to use it in a lot of ways to just catalyze and motivate people to, whether it's starting a company or investing in others. I think also, you know, I talked to Tiffany about the crew. I talked to her about maybe combining what Macy does with what Tiffany does about starting these social clubs, and I say my version of it before there's anything specific. And I'm not kidding. Do they have Red Lobster here? Is Red Lobster in LA? Cheddar biscuits. Cheddar biscuits. Right? So here's what I say. I propose: if you don't know Red Lobster, get your whole life. Roscoe's chicken. Here's what we do. You meet 2 or 3 people here, and if you see someone who's shy, you pull them in. You do the open circle thing, right? You bring them in, and you say, look, either this is a group of investors or this is a group of founders, and once a quarter, once a month, once whatever, we're all going to meet at the Red Lobster. I really need them to sponsor me. I really do. We're going to meet at the Red Lobster or at the Roscoe's or whatnot. And we're going to chit-chat and share deals and share ideas and share stories. And we're gonna make this for ourselves, because everybody can do that. They can do that. You can do that. You don't have to sign up for it. You don't have to ask anybody's permission. Everybody's grown. We're grown. You ever just sit and do something and you're like, oh, I'm grown. Like, you ever have a day, this is gonna be TMI, but you ever have a day where you're like, I've had 4 phone calls and I haven't put my pants on. Seriously. And you're just like, I better put some pants on. Because you're grown. You're grown. Yeah, Sage, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Don't spread the rumor around. Some information. Lots of Zoom calls. Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think over the next, let's just say over the next 15 months or so, you'll see us addressing it as well.
And really, guys, pre-order, because pre-order is what makes this book a huge success.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't, and thank you for that. For anyone who doesn't know, I didn't know this until this year, every pre-ordered book counts towards the first day of sales. So when you're trying to get on that bestseller list to get more exposure, yes, it counts towards that. So like, I'm still trying to get over the Zoom call. I'm trying to remember, did I ever have a Zoom call with Sage? So that's why you'll see people pushing. You know how like movies, they're always talking about that first weekend, because that determines how many weekends they can stay in them. So for me, it's really, I'm excited to see people having this, because so many books encouraged me to do this. That's like the kind of full circle thing. Another thing I'll say is, I filmed an episode of a new TV show called Mel Robbins Show. So Mel Robbins, does anybody know Mel Robbins? So she's a motivational speaker. She's one of the most booked women, most booked people in the world speaking, and she has 20 million views on her TED Talk, and she just launched a TV show this week. And we've been talking to each other for about half a year, and I signed up to be in her audience. And I told her, I'm like, I'm going to be in New York, so I have this free afternoon. I'm going to pop in and be in your audience. She's like, no. I'm going to have you on as an expert. So next thing you know, I'm in the green room, and I'm on a segment. I don't know how it turned out, so here's what we're going to do. I don't know when it airs. Probably airs like end of September or early October. I'll let you know. We're all gonna watch it, okay? Together. I trust y'all. We're family. We're gonna watch it. If I look crazy or sound crazy, and it just wasn't my best day, because this is a very whatever, we're just not gonna talk about it. We're gonna say, hold on, wait. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do when we'll know. We're gonna talk about it. But I really enjoyed myself, and I have a feeling, she said twice, kind of, that same day she said twice, it won't be the last. So if you see it and you enjoy it, ping them, tell them that you enjoyed it. Can't do it before then because you'll know I sent y'all. I love her on there. She hasn't You lying.
That's awesome. Amplification, guys. Seriously championing for each other. I mean, this is what it's all about. I think we have time for one more question.
You've been trying to ask a question for a while. She has been trying.
Hello, my name is Marianne. First of all, thank you so much for being here and for the Riveter and Future for Us for putting this all together. This is amazing to see so many amazing Wow. My question is, I'm actually, one of my side projects, I have my own business, but one of my side projects is I'm creating a mini docuseries highlighting women of color, and I'm in the process of meeting some people to talk about getting this on either one of the major networks or more like the streaming type of networks. Before I go into do you have any advice for me going into these? I'm not in entertainment. This is something really as a passion project that also I have numbers and stats behind, and I know this is something we all need to see because we don't see a lot of women of color highlighted as like successful entrepreneurs like on TV and shows. Like, what advice do you have for me going into these meetings, really pitching to try to get this spot or to try to get funding for a pilot? Do you have any advice?
Well, the only advice I really have there, just because it's not something that we invest in, it's like more a personal interest that I have on the media side, and is that a lot of times I'll hear that and I'll ask if someone has an agent, and they say no, and I'm like, you're missing a piece there. Do you have an agent?
No.
Okay.
But
So
I
what?
trademarked this under like the Writers Guild, like the show.
That's very good.
idea that I
Very
have.
good. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know the quality, to be frank, because I haven't seen it. So I won't assume anything. What I will do now, strike that. I'm going to assume it's great. That's what I'm going to assume. What I would suggest is, it's really hard to get into these rooms, and if you've already gotten yourself in the room, that's great. Like, cool. If you have a Netflix meeting next week, disregard everything I'm about to say.
Someone who knows someone.
Someone who knows someone, right? So it's very competitive, and even though they have a ton of money and all these different platforms they need you keep hearing people say, oh, they need content, so it really is. I mean, it's as much or if not more insulated as venture. So but the cool thing is, what you could do is, if you have the kind of thick skin for it, it depends on how well you take rejection, because there will be some. You can take the teaser of whatever this documentary is and send it out to every agency that you can think of, because someone will see it there. Or you can go in and kind of talk to someone who's a junior and ask them what's kind of the secret to getting in, because an agent is there to make a commission off of something that they're able to sell. So they do all like the work for you, and most major networks and places like that won't take a meeting unless you have an agent bringing you in. If you know someone who knows, Ted Sarunas, whatever, from Netflix, that's a different story, and that may be what you're doing. But in most cases, it's not about impressing them, it's about impressing an agent, and most agents have a junior to them who are on every call, who are shadowing them. Those juniors want to become very powerful agents in the future, and so they're always scouting because they want to be the one who brought something valuable in, and so you want to get their attention and take their feedback. And so you may reach out to, they're not that many, but you may reach out to 10 or 12 of all sizes, from a CAA over to a different boutique, and take the feedback, learn from it. But you're probably going to find someone who's at least willing to have a meeting with you and give you the real deal in their lane. And so I would go there. I would spend some time there. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I actually am signed to CAA now. Like, I've been kind of navigating these waters. So I say that from experience.
Thank you.
One more. You didn't. One more. She found the check. It was on this side of this. It was on this side.
Right. So nice to be here. Thank you so much. I DM'd you. On Instagram, I have Well Women of Color, and so it's a health and wellness program. But I wanted to ask you, in terms of success, because I think success means different things to many different people, and if you just love what you're doing and you're able to put gas in the car, serve, and and provide impact, then that can be a success. But in your world, and this whole world of social media, where success really seems to fall back to the revenue that your company generates, is that in fact the biggest indicator of success in this day and age in terms of getting those collaborative partners and connections?
Are you saying is that how success is measured by investors? Is that like behind closed doors? Is that what it really comes down to? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, yes. Not necessarily profit, as we've seen. I don't want to keep picking on IPOs, but I find myself thinking about it a lot. But yeah, a lot of times it's either that, or it's like just sheer volume of people who are like, if you think about.
That's what I want to know, either financial or revenue, money generated, or either people served. So when millions of people served who are receiving benefit and impact, but you're not really making a whole lot of money.
Yeah, I mean it just depends. Like, I think about a Product Hunt. Product Hunt didn't really have a business model. They could turn on a lot of levers, and I say this with respect because Ryan is a good friend of mine. But they didn't really have a business model. But the reason they were so interesting to investors was because they had all of these eyes, and they were so well regarded by every entrepreneur who wanted to be on. It was that kind of thing. And so I think this is conjecture completely, but they could have said, okay, let's go out and raise X number of millions and start charging. Start getting advertisers, or start charging to be posted or something like that. And it was just that it was in the fact that they had those options. Instead, they chose to be acquired by AngelList and not go through that stress. And I think that was a really interesting decision too. But yeah, I think it depends. If you're making a ton of money, or if you're moving really fast. I think in Delane's case, right, with Play Versus. He's in 13,000 high schools, and I guess 14,000 is the number that have football teams, or like major football teams. So it was just that 18 months of just taking off. And then you can look, okay, well, I'm going to charge this amount, and just kind of catching up to the business model, which is actually really good too. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Parna and I are so grateful and so humble and so privileged to have you here tonight, and taking your time to be here, to volunteer, to be in front of so many women of color. And again, we're so humbled. Can we give everybody, just do a round of applause for Arlan? for us and other POC startups, and this is the best. And everybody, thank you for being here tonight. Aparna, do you want to say anything? Do you want to say anything?
I kind of wanted to ask, but I wanted to find out, what time is it?
8:19.
Okay, Rachel Meadows not on yet, all right. So it's 8:19, we have a few minutes to go. What I'd like to do is, if there's anyone who wants to do a picture for the gram. So I kind of figured, so here's how it works though. The only way we can really do this, and I mean it, is we have to have a no pitch situation, right? Because we have probably 10 minutes. And we just have to have the hello and a picture and, a little bit of Keanu Reeves. We'll do that. If that works for y'all, I'm down to just stand somewhere and do that. And if that's cool, if it's not, hurting my feelings, I'll go watch Mad Owl. No, but does that sound good? Okay.
Okay, so yes, we can do this. We'll have Caitlin on our team. She will run a line at the step and repeat at the sign in the front for those who want that. Simultaneously, for those who got headshots, go over there. If you still want headshots, we'll have headshots going on in the back. Also, for those who are in town, Arlan will be back here at the Riveter on Friday, having another event. I think it's titled, This is What an Investor Looks Like.
Yeah, it's for people who are investors. Yeah.
Yes. So there are the other opportunities there. We're out at 9.
I will be out before 9. I actually do have to leave, so
okay.
I'm thinking like a 10-15 minute situation. Yes. That's why I'm saying if we can do it like that.
So let's get some music going. Let's get the line. Thank you so much. Love you all.